All right, man, peace. So I had seen a couple of people make some commentary about the recent Black Men Summit that was popularized and was shown on BET. It was curated or moderated by Mr. DL Hughley, which I remember doing a video on a couple of weeks back or maybe last month, where I had some strict commentary about him based off of the fact and matter of words that he chose to use when it came to someone like Janet Jackson when he had made his remark about her critiquing the presidential hopeful Kamala Harris. And I know a lot of people who's been watching my channel for a while has been kind of seeing like Bronzebird has been primarily critiquing Kamala Harris all the time and, not really coming after Donald Trump. And I understand that it's election day. So, the views is going to be a little bit limited on trying to make some more commentary about both candidates or maybe one candidate in particular. But I wanted to, kind of take this time to make this commentary towards my thoughts towards the Black Men's Summit on BET. And at first, by first, what we're going to do is we're going to read about BET's five things you missed in the Black Men's Summit. And after that, I'm going to give my commentary about what is it that my thoughts was towards the Black Men's Summit. So, Pete. So it says, five things you missed during BET's Black Men's Summit. The in-depth conversation was moderated by comedian and DL Hughley. So it says the BET Black Men's Summit was a treasure trove of information showcasing some of the most recognizable figures from various industries. Hosted by stand-up comedian and actor DL Hughley, the event brought together Black men, including Jermaine Dupri, Michael Ealy, Vic Mensa, and others for in-depth conversations about the critical issues affecting their communities ahead of the 2024 presidential elections. If you didn't catch last night's discussion, here are five essential things you missed. So to start off, I mean, obviously they had a lot of entertainers in this. They're showing Jermaine Dupri as being one of the examples. My opinion, real quick on this is it's a marketing ploy, obviously, and because it's BET, Black Entertainment Television, they were going to try to pull out all the stops that they could to get the Black men that's been in the industry for a while, primarily the acting and the music industry, but also, the brothers from the 100 Black Men organization involved in it, which made sense. But there could have been some more things that could have been connected with Black men that wasn't really spoke about. But again, I'm going to wait to give my opinion on that after I read this article. DL Hughley and Jermaine Dupri reminded us all that Donald Trump was not responsible for the stimulus check. The narrative surrounding Trump's efforts to secure aid for millions of Americans during the 2020 Corona-19 pandemic has often been distorted. I feel like it's really important that we, as men in this room, give them the facts today. So Deaf founder Jermaine Dupri shared, cautioning young viewers out there that some of the news they hear may be misleading. Hughley highlighted there was a specific reason that Donald Trump, even though he didn't give those checks out, there was a specific reason he delayed them so he could put his name on it. He added he knew it would have that effect. Kenny Burns told us what Black men voters were thinking. And this is about Kenny Burns, who went out in the streets of Atlanta to ask random Black men on the street about what is the issues that they wanted to talk to Black men about, what was important to Black men on the streets of Atlanta. Black men can speak for themselves, and Tuesday's conversation provided a platform for that as Speaker Kenny Burns shared insights into the community's concerns. Burns hit the streets where potential voters voiced concerns about the economy, healthcare, and more. I think tax credits are very important for entrepreneurs here in Georgia. We also want to be part of the American dream. A lot of people I talk to want to have home ownership and they want to figure out pathways how to get there. I think another big thing is childcare and being entrepreneurs, Burn shared. Vic Mensa made space for Black women. Chicago-based rapper and activist Vic Mensa reminded us that women's rights were on the list of their concerns. There were on their list of concerns. The MC recalled a time he felt unable to protect his sister, sharing, "There was a KKK rally in Memphis, Tennessee at the time, and I just remember how unable I felt to protect her." And that's a direct correlation to that becoming another possibility, he added. Just the emboldening of the people who seek to destroy us and to destroy our mothers, sisters, nieces, and the women in our lives. So I think that it's an issue of paramount importance to us and to me. Michael Ealy weighed in on Kamala Harris's qualifications as president. Trump's background in business, which has been questioned and subject to lawsuits, attracted many of his supporters during his first presidential run in 2016, while Harris's career as a criminal prosecutor has drawn her backlash. During last night's discussion, Ely spoke on the double standard, stating, "It amazes me oftentimes how many times Democrats have to provide for seats for all of the things that they do and for all of their qualifications, yet on the other side, there's just no accountability." He continued, "When you look at what Kamala Harris, who's been a public servant basically her whole life, she is the most qualified candidate to run for president." Ely and Hughley go on to address the widely circulated claim that Vice President Harris imprisoned thousands and thousands of Black men. So if you look at her as just a cop, which has been debunked, and it's been the methodology, like Vic was saying, it was 45 guys, and that's it. Ben Crump spoke on the importance of supporting our community's LGBTQ members. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump delivered a reminder to those who felt one group is progressing more than the other. Everything has to be taken in context. When you think about civil rights, we must remember that if they can discriminate against them, then it makes it easier to discriminate against us. And they love to try to pit us against one another. All right, peace. So, I've seen a lot of people, like I said, that made a commentary about the Black Men's Summit and doing a little bit of research and context of trying to understand where they come from about this whole thing. You know, it was started on October 29th, 2024, and obviously we already know the moderator was D.L. Hughley. Now, to start this off, in my understanding, something told me this was going to cry a whole entire pandering fest, especially the Democratic pandering fest. And, you know, the problem is pretty clear, man. You should have not had D.L. Hughley as the moderator for this conversation or this big panel discussion for Black men, in my opinion. You should have had someone who's not biased. Someone who isn't trying to let it be known that they're for Trump or Kamala Harris. You should have had someone that just was like, "Hey, I'm not going to talk about my personal affiliations or who is it that I want to vote for, because I don't want to affect that. I don't want that to affect the conversation us as Black men need to have in order to move forward with how we're going to try to become known in this election, and what is the trigger points that each candidate should really care for our issues." So, with that being said, I had a couple of notes that I took down and me understanding about what's crucial points that I wanted to make the marking on when I watched this whole entire segment on BET. And I already understood that it was just going to be biased and that a lot of people were basically saying who they wanted to vote for without really saying it. And obviously, when I read the article to you, you can already see that most Black men on that panel, or probably that was a representation of Black men on that stage or in that audience, was already pointing to the fact of different factions that they are already leaning on the left side and leaning for the Democratic Party. Now, if you want to have an understanding on this, in my personal conversations and what is it that I think, yes, I think that I started to grow a spine and I started to say I'm not with the Democratic Party anymore after a couple of years, after starting to understand things, and I started to become apolitical because I thought to myself that it's both two sides of the same coin. Democratic Party wants to keep you the same way to think about slavery, PTSD, and not move forward as a nation. And the Republicans is all about their self-interest, grandiosity, and all these different things. But progressive issues, that's more or less trying to maneuver the different ways of America and not care about everybody else, depending on what class you are in order to have a discussion. So to continue this conversation, there's certain things that I picked up from this Black Men Summit that pretty much, number one, should have been something that should have been going on with the BET network, not only from 2024, but should have been something that's been on the blueprint way before the Biden administration, if we're really talking about caring for black men. But having an understanding on it, DL Hughley and a couple of progressive so-called black men want to be able to have a conversation on behalf of black men because they care for black men, or they're probably signed up by that shit by the boule. That's my opinion. That's just all I'm saying. So the first thing that I took down on my notes and having an understanding about this conversation was when they started to have this conversation about Trump and giving cops full immunity and all these different things and acts of full of emotion. The funny thing about this recording taking place in Georgia is that Georgia, in my opinion, is trying to turn themselves into a police state. A lot of people don't know about it. A lot of people do know about it. Well, the people in Georgia know about it. Some people do. But the rest of America doesn't know that they're doing all these different exercises and doing all these different things within the police headquarters or these different places where there's marked by police, where they're basically trying to get rid of your rights as a citizen through protest. So if something happens in a protest and you try to act out, the police can lock your ass up. And like I said before, America is probably trying to get themselves into a police state. More times than not, you could probably see it, you can probably sense it, and more times than not, it doesn't matter who becomes president. Because obviously, America is basically trying to turn itself inside out, getting rid of laws, redefining and rectifying the Constitution and amendments and all these different things, and you guys sit back and just think that, oh, well, it's just because Trump is doing it. Kamala Harris will probably do the same thing. And if it isn't Kamala Harris doing it, it's probably the people that's backing behind Kamala Harris, which is the Senate, which is people that's in the cabinet, and all these other people that's involved in politics. So when Wes Bellamy made this claim about acts of full emotion, when he was basically gearing that towards Trump, I can agree with him when I could say that Trump definitely says some things that's based off of emotion. It's not really gearing itself towards talking about the actual political issues that matter to Americans, especially black Americans. It's more so talking about, well, you know, these people are stupid and we need to do this and we need to do that. It's all that. And I can have an understanding where I agree with that, but at the same time, if we're going to press on the issue about one candidate, you know me on this channel, I'm going to press on the other candidate too. Now, there's definitely been statements that Trump has made that I've found to be very immature, especially towards Kamala Harris. No need to reason to call her a bitch or, you know, have these conversations where you're just calling people stupid and rude and, you know, things like that is totally out the woodworks and it was not called for. But at the same time, what is the thing we've been saying the whole entire time about Kamala Harris? Every time you have a conversation with Kamala Harris, all she talks about is what Trump did, what Trump did, what Trump did. What about what she did? Her whole entire tenure as vice president. What about what Joe Biden did? And the fact that when it came to Joe Biden, you know his ass is senile, but at the same time, you protecting this man and sitting up there talking about, well, it's okay. So if we're talking about full emotions, like I said on this channel, both candidates are fully guilty of being full of emotion. So moving on with this, you know, Michael Ealy made a point about George Floyd and talking about this whole entire thing about police brutality and this, that, and the third. This is things that happen within every single presidential tenure. It's happened over Obama. It's happened under George Bush. It's happened over Bill Clinton. It happened in every single presidential tenure. So it's no different that it happened under Trump, and it's no different that it would happen maybe, if it does happen, if she is to get elected, that it would happen under Kamala Harris. it's could be under the faction of better policing, or we still have to rectify the different things that happen in America when dealing with racism and dealing with the unfair treatment of so-called black men in this country. So I didn't really understand where he said that, but teach his own on that. Moving on to this topic, or this main conversation they want to have about confronting sexism, which I can go all day about. First and foremost, this whole entire faux woke bullshit about hyper-masculinity, and about how it is true that you do have men that don't want to vote for a woman president because it's a woman, which I don't have a say-so on that, because my thing about it is, at the end of the day, it's understandable politics. I'm just trying to be as fair and balanced as possible. So I'm trying to just be like, okay, I understand your issues, I understand your issues, I understand your issues. There are literal reasons why a woman would not be fit to run this country, or therefore run any country for that fact of the matter. There's different components of why certain men break down why she's not a potential candidate for this race. They even thought Tulsi Gabbard shouldn't even be someone that runs this country because she's a woman. And she's more right-leaning and more into, America, America, America. And that's it. So then we get on to this conversation about hyper-masculinity and being afraid of a woman and all this bullshit. And of course, when it came to this whole entire broadcast, black men on this damn recording has made it their business to sit up there and say, what about your mother? What about your sister? What about your nieces, your nephews, and all this other stuff, which was a talking point that was brought on by Vic Mensa later when he had talked about the safety of black women, which aligned with the whole entire thing about getting rid of babies, or baby deletions for lack of a better term. And which, in my opinion, this whole entire thing is about being careful about who you lay with, and you having control over your sperm when it goes inside of a woman, which I tell men all the time, your seed is precious. So you have to be very careful about who you give it to, because if you wind up having that baby mama drama, that's on your ass. And there ain't nothing you can do about it, because men are not in charge of baby deletions. Women are. They can say all day, well, it's men, it's men, it's men. It's up to the woman. You know why? Because it's her body. It's like we say all the time. It's her body, her choice. My body, my choice. So a man cannot literally force a woman to get a baby deletion. You morons. You know what happens? Only thing that a man can do is psychologically, to the best of his ability, to try to convince a woman that she should get rid of the baby. But more times than not, the woman will choose either or not whether she wants to get rid of the baby or she doesn't. So that is not a point of conversation that needs to be added, of trying to say that men are trying to force women to get baby deletions or this, that, and the third. Men can't do that. Men can't literally, unless a man wants to get very violent. But how common is it for men to be violent towards women that don't want to have their baby? And let's talk about this as well. Why are we not pointing out the factor that women are so proud of getting these baby deletions nowadays? Whether you're talking about red pill conversations, or talking about women or rap stars nowadays, rappers, especially black women, since you're talking about protecting black women, what about those black rappers, those black female rappers that have those rap songs that talk about, yeah, I'm gonna go to the clinic and I'm gonna get rid of that baby because I don't want his baby. He ain't shit. I can't stand dealing with broke niggas. Like, why don't they ever talk about that? If we're talking about accountability, when you're talking to yourself about a black man. You know what's the problem with black men? They enable a lot of bullshit. And with enabling a lot of bullshit, they sit up there and just say, well, because it's about the black woman. A lot of you black men are simps. You dudes are cucks. You proud to have this whole entire conversation of holding black men accountable, but you don't want to sit up there and say, I'm ignoring all this stupid bullshit. And I don't agree with you talking about, black woman, because if you agree with sitting up there doing black baby deletions, you are the problem, especially yourself, by having another man's child. You see where we get with that? This is the thing that they don't talk about. There's black women who willfully will go to these clinics and just get the baby out of them. 3 weeks pregnant, 5 weeks pregnant, 6 weeks pregnant, because it's that feminism rhetoric that's on them. And Margaret Sanger to this day would probably be smiling in black women's faces if she saw what black women was doing. It is what it is. So with adding that, they had more of this conversation talking about this problem and differences about the LGBTQ and black people, right? And I already knew that these black men on stage was not going to really get an understanding of what we mean about there being a problem between the LGBTQ and black people, or black people's issues, and why the LGBTQ is propagated as more of an importance than black people's issues. It has nothing to do with them saying, oh well, we don't care for black queer people. It's not about sexual orientation. It's not about how you express yourself. It's about a whole entire community as a whole that gets more of a chance to have a speaking on things than the black community does. And the problem is the black community tries to immerse themselves with the LGBTQ community because the LGBTQ community tries to regulate themselves, trying to have this more say this likeness, this shared commonality of how compressed they, no, not compressed, I'm sorry, but trying to get this whole entire thing of relatability. So how oppressed they are, excuse me, that's the word. How oppressed they are, just like black people are. When you're talking about a whole entire nationality of people who had to deal with slavery and then have their nationalities changed to African Americans at a certain time period versus someone at the most that's been beat up because they like the same sex or because they want to transition into another gender, is not quite the same type of things that we should be reliable or relatable to. No one's sitting up there saying you should. I think when you speak to black Americans, they're not sitting up there saying it's wrong for you to be the same gender loving people, because we're cool with people who are same gender loving. We're cool with people who transition. The difference is when they try to incorporate themselves into black American issues and try to say that we're both the same people. No, the fuck we not. That's the difference. And that's the thing that they keep missing, and they keep not trying to understand that we're trying to say on that issue. And that's what the problem was with Black Lives Matter. A topic of conversations I've had immensely on this platform, on my channel, even on the Brownstone Powwow, many times. And I've sat there and I said the Black Lives Matter did not give a shit about the black man unless he was dead. And with that being said, you know who they cared about when they was alive, and they are alive? The LGBTQ community. And especially when it came to who they were sending their money to and who they were supporting when it came to centers. Funny how this is the same network that's sitting up there talking about the Black Men Summit and how mental health issues is important, but at the same time you didn't get at the Black Lives Matter's neck about how they should invest more money into black men when it comes to their black mental health issues. When black men don't even have a lot of sources for therapists, for a psychiatrist, even for homeless shelters to help them out, which is a video I did again on this channel highlighting that even the NYC mayor understood there was a problem with that. That's what I mean. So moving on to the same issue, they got on to this whole entire thing about the black men's agenda, in which they went out into the streets of Atlanta to ask black men about what's their top concerns when it comes to this election and things they would like to see happen for themselves, right? So a lot of the times they talked about the economy, they talked about only two people mentioned mental health, and then of course with Jermaine Dupri, I don't even think it was Jermaine Dupri, it was D.L. Hughley that had this conversation about the stimulus check and about this erroneous claim that the reason why Trump wants, a lot of people, why they want to vote for Trump is because they're hoping for another stimulus package, which is not true. This is the dumbest thing about these stupid ass Democrats that sit around and have circle jerk conversations with each other. It is not about the stimulus check. I bet you right now that a lot of black Americans is not wishing for another stimulus check. What they want to know is, how are we going to lower this inflation in the economy in this country? What is to be done about the $7.25 federal minimum wage that a lot of people are not able to even be able to survive on. Say for instance in New York State, or specifically in New York City, the minimum wage is $15. Now, how could you manage $15 an hour if you're paying $2,000 or $3,000 for an apartment? Let alone if you're paying $1,500 or less than that, maybe $1,300 to $1,500 if you're lucky. How can you manage that with a $15 minimum wage? That happens to the fact of the matter that usually a lot of people have to overuse their bodies, which means they have to work 2 to 3 jobs in order to make ends meet, especially in a big city like New York City, where I'm from, or maybe a city like Atlanta, where they're probably doing minimum wage at $10 and $11 an hour, but they're not using anything to fix it up. When they tried to go out there and try to use the factor of using maybe $20 an hour in the state of California, a lot of businesses had to close because they were not able to keep up with the demand of trying to pay more for their workers. So there needs to be a middle ground on that, in which I think this was a point that D.L. Hughley since did not understand, in which I ain't trying to cape for Trump, but maybe that's on the mind state of Trump. I don't think he really tried to touch more on that whole entire thing about minimum wage, but inflation is very important to have this issue. It's not about the stimulus check. And there's more reasons why even black American men are saying, yo, I'm gonna vote for Trump instead of voting for Kamala Harris because I think she's really weak on this issue. So, with that being said, more of these conversations that came into, I think, Ken Burns and the protection of black women, again, and all this other stuff. I want to get to that point about Vic Mensa when he had this conversation about, protection of black women and all these different things, about a KKK rally that happened in Mississippi and his sister was there. We all find it very important that we want to protect our loved ones. We want to protect our mothers, our sisters, our girlfriends, our wives, our nieces, any family members that are females, especially as a black man. Because based off of it, as a man, you want to protect women. You want to be there for your women. So at the same time, the problem within the psychosis of the black man is that he likes to be coddled by a black woman. So he wants to go to the black woman for every single validation he could find in order to feel succumbed and feel proud of himself. That's the problem with black men, as showcased on the Black Men Summit. See, and it's funny because even outside of this IRL, that when I had preached the whole entire thing about how black men's health is important, who was the first one that not even supported? There's black women that support it, but they then turn the conversation to being about, well, what about black women? What about us? Are you going to find something for us? And it becomes that whole entire narcissistic value in which I'm not even talking about you, and it's not about you, it's about black men. So the Black Men Summit, as a conclusion of watching these whole entire things take place on this syndicated network, which is so funny to me, is that yes, they did pander and they did make this all about the Kamala Harris cry. Why don't you want to vote for Kamala Harris? Well, what is Trump going to do? And this is why I felt as if when it came to the whole entire thing about this, they did not need a biased moderator to go ahead and have this conversation. They should have had someone who is fairly balanced, who is not going to make it seem as if it's going to be all about Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party. Instead, it was the importance of trying to understand the issues more between black men. D.L. Hughley already shot himself in the foot after being disrespectful to Janet Jackson when she made her comments about Kamala Harris's heritage. You know what he did? Sat there and went on a whole entire diatribe about her appearance. This is the reason I wouldn't respect D.L. Hughley to have a conversation and be a moderator of the Black Men Summit. Get the hell out of here. And that's exactly the problem with these weak-ass black men who know exactly the problems that's going on with black men, but they steadily pander and don't get to the actual issues and the problems that's going on with black men themselves. They're looking for black women's validation, and like I said before, it only matters when they're having these conversations about uplifting the mother goddess archetype. Take it as you will. Otherwise than that, that was my whole entire diatribe, my TED Talk, whatever you want to call it. If you agree or you don't agree, let me know in the comment section. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. Peace.